It's race week in Indy. The 109th running of the Indy 500 is Sunday. And if you're looking for a great read to pass the time between now and then, we've got the book just for you. The Indy 500, a year-long quest to win the greatest spectacle in racing. Bobby C., Aaron McAtee hosting here. And we've got the author of said book, Ray Hartjen. Ray, how's it going? How are you?
I'm doing well, Bobby. And Aaron, thanks so much for having me on the show. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
So excited to talk about this book. I was thinking about some of the questions to ask you, Ray, because I just really love the read. And it seems like you were inspired by a book when you were a young guy that helped you eventually write this one.
Yeah, it's an homage of a sort to a book called The Indy 500 30 Days in May. Bobby, when I was a elementary school student, I'm not exactly sure what year, but I think my third grade year, through the Scholastic America program, I came across this treasure of this book. And as a avid sports fan, I was familiar with Indy 500, but just the race itself and not everything that went up into that race. And that book of Hal Higdon's, they chronicled the 1970 race from April 30th, the day before the track opened for practice, to May 30th, the day that Al Unser, his name at the time was Al Unser. We know him today as Al Unser Sr. He won his first Indy 500 that day. And it was just a daily diary of the race. And it captivated my attention in a way that, like nothing else could. I reread that book time after time again, multiple times a year for like a decade. I'm serious, completely. Up until, I bought a copy a couple of years ago, a retro read copy, because someplace in my father's house lies my original copy. I loved that book, and it ignited a passion in me in the Indy 500 as an event, and then motorsports in general. And I, for years, thought about, wouldn't it be great to update this book, and maybe I can get some other people hooked into what I consider the greatest sporting event that there is, the Indy 500. And so the book came out. It's been well received so far, and hopefully, like I said, we can turn some casual fans into really rabid fans, right?
Kind of skimmed through. I haven't read the entire thing yet, but I was really impressed with just you breaking down some of the key events leading up to the 500 and after, because really the month of May, right, starts in May, but really it starts at the beginning of the year, which you kind of allude to in the book, because it all depends on the silly season, different events that happen in racing that do affect the outcome in May. So I was really impressed with that. There's so many people that just focus on just the month of May itself, but it's really more of just the month of May. Just talk a little bit about kind of just like your thinking behind some of those events, including some of those events, and just some of the legwork with actually kind of putting together the book.
Yeah, I wanted to have a book like Higdon's book. And Higdon's went through the entire month of May, back when the month of May was an entire month of May. It wasn't that long ago, maybe about 20 years ago,
Right.
The track would open for practice. At the beginning of the month. There would be a week of practice, a weekend of qualification, another week of practice, another week of qualifications, leading up to the week before the race. But it's not like that way nowadays. Nowadays, for I think for a variety of reasons, they've compressed the month of May into about 12 days. And so I didn't think I could write a daily diary of 12 days. But then I also felt as though I didn't need to, Aaron, because really the Indianapolis 500 is the biggest single day sporting event in the world. Almost 400,000 people are going to trek into the Speedway this Sunday for the race. And it's the biggest auto race in the world, the oldest auto race in the world. This will be the 109th edition, as Bobby said in the intro. And so it makes your career, and it changes lives if you win this, regardless of your affiliation with the team, but particularly if you're the driver. And this singular race is really more important than the season-long championship. You ask any driver, would you trade a championship for the Indy 500? And if they hadn't won the Indy 500 yet, they'd say absolutely, right? So for me,
yeah, most will say yes, absolutely.
Yeah, for a race fan and for racers, for people in the organization, the Indy 500, it's the Super Bowl, right? And all the other races are kind of like things that just prepare you for the Super Bowl. So really, the starting line for next year's race begins with the finishing line of this year's race, right? And so with that philosophy in my mind, I just thought, well, why don't we just write the book entailing that entire year-long journey to get to the Indy 500. So the book starts at the last 2 laps of the 2023 race and then goes through the entire year through the 2024 race, and then ends with the victory banquet the day after. So I thought that was a good way of kind of positioning the book. And then, being able to, you can't talk much about the Indy 500 without talking about its history and this kind of wild cast of characters that are involved in it. So, readers, I hope are entertained by, delving back a little bit into history and then exploring some of these great names that are associated with the race, names like AJ Foyt, Mario Andretti, and the like.
And Ray, interestingly enough, you mentioned picking up the story from the end of 23 and then the 2024 race. I don't think you could have picked 2 really better races to probably chronicle. I mean, obviously the first win for Josef Newgarden and Penske, but then just the timing of all the things that have happened between now and then, and more specifically, even now going into this Sunday, Penske making headlines again with the car possibly not up to par with where it should be, and maybe some protests in the near future. Aaron and I were talking about that today, because some of the drivers might be upset that it looks like Penske might actually be cheating.
There's the book covers a possible cheating scandal of last year. Maybe it was just a mistake. Maybe it wasn't. There was another huge mistake made by Penske Racing yesterday. One car crashed. 2 cars failed inspection. So today, those 2 cars, including the 2-time race winners, Josef Newgarden, they're now going to be pushed to the very back of the field. They'll be starting 32nd and 33rd. There's clearly some sort of lack of operational oversight going on at Team Penske. That's an organization that prides itself on being Penske perfect, and they've been far from perfect the last 2 years. What makes these really big stories is that Roger Penske not only owns Team Penske, he owns the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and he owns the IndyCar Series, right? So any, is it oversight? Is it accidental? Yeah, there's an old adage in racing: if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. You're always trying to get that what's called an unfair advantage. That is, have something that nobody else has. Therefore, you'll have a bit of advantage. But these have been 2 blatant rules violations for an organization that is, again, strives to be Penske perfect. So it's created an awful lot of controversy, and it's a shame. As a fan, I'm irritated because you're tarnishing my event. This is not Roger Penske's event and Penske Entertainment's event. This is the event of the fans. I meet people at the Speedway that have been going for 80 years. Right? They've been attending the race. This is something more than just, an event. This is part of people's lives. And I take their custodianship of that event seriously. And I know they take it seriously as well. But, it'll be interesting the next couple of days to finally get to one final answer of the truth of what happened Saturday and Sunday in particular. And there's going to be people that are going to be a bit bent out of shape for quite some time.
Yeah, and the big thing that came out today was, someone took a picture of Josef Newgarden's 2024 Indy 500 winning car, and it has the same thing that they got, disqualified for this weekend. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure Pato. I mean, if I was Pato Award, obviously I would try to contest that. Obviously, I don't think anything's going to happen with the result from the race last year, but I'm sure people will be bent out of shape about that as well, like you said.
Yeah, and it's I asked a question today, and I haven't gotten an answer to it. Just how technical is tech inspection? How can cars? If we were to believe Tim Cindric, the president of Penske Racing, yesterday, he kind of felt as though the violation was accidentally discovered. That one car had passed inspection, the other had failed. They're identical cars. That if that's true, that doesn't paint a really great picture of an organization that's run, that's owned and operated by Roger Penske. It's not right, Aaron, and I hope we get to some answers.
Yeah. And Ray, most of the time when Aaron and I go back and forth about how much we love the series, it is kind of cool that he's a real life Hoosier. Myself, I guess more of a wannabe here in New York, and I absolutely love the series. I love everything about the Indy 500. Been watching religiously since I was a little boy, and obviously been hooked on it. I think it's interesting that maybe for you, you have a little bit of both, because a native of Texas, but you actually, because your family did travel some and military background a bit, you got a chance to kind of get your first taste of the Indy 500 in May of 1978, first taste of the Speedway. I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about how you got hooked on the Indy 500, aside from the book that we mentioned earlier. And the
Yeah, I'll get into that in just a second, Bobby, but I just want to let listeners understand that I believe what I just heard Bobby say is that this New Yorker, on the eve of the Pacers-Knicks squaring off in the Eastern Conference Finals, you just said that you kind of wish that you were a Hoosier.
I do. I love Indy's my favorite place, no doubt. I mean, New York is definitely a basketball town, so the Knicks have lit this place ablaze. But I think the Pacers and Indy, of course, known for their basketball too. I mean, Pacers and Racers, right?
And it was great, I don't know how many years ago, 30, when it was the Knicks versus the Hicks. And, we would have updates at the Speedway. We'd be, listening along to what's going on in New York, what's going on at Market Square Arena in Indianapolis during some of those great series. Yeah, my mother is from Houston, Texas. And her brother, my uncle, had occasion to bump into AJ Foyt as a young guy, and so AJ was always like, he was like our guy, for the Indy 500. I read that book, like I talked about. AJ's one of my heroes, and then, blessed of all occurrences, my father got stationed at Fort Benjamin Harrison in Indianapolis. I was like, holy cow, I'm like in 8th grade. I'm going to be able to actually go to the Speedway. So the first time I went to the Speedway was 78 for practice and qualifications. My first race was in 1979. I love going to the Speedway when it's empty and there's no on-track activities. There's so much history there. I mean, the history of the Indy 500 is so deep and so rich, and it goes on for so long. But when you get there on a race day, the sheer number of people, when I was a kid, they would talk about how there'd be more people than the population of Cincinnati would be around this 2.5 mile oval, which is incredible, right? There's just the number of people is amazing. And then, if you've never been to an auto race out there, listeners, go to an auto race, even if it's like the little local bull ring down, in your town or what have you. The sights and the sounds and the feelings of going to an auto race, particularly a race like the Indy 500, is sensory overload. And it's not for everybody, but it is for me. It is for a lot of other folks. And I just, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is my happy place. Yeah.
Yeah, Ray. I mean, for me, I've always had a hard time, as someone that I'd like to believe is a wordsmith and obviously loves doing creative work and working in this industry. I've always had a hard time really describing it to other people, because as someone that's been a credentialed reporter for the World Series, the NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup, Super Bowls, multiple times over, when people ask me, what is the greatest event you've ever covered? I tell them all the time with credentials, it's definitely the Indy 500. I don't think there's anything like the Indy 500, not just because of the race, but the entire atmosphere. And sometimes I feel like it's hard to describe exactly what that is. But ironically, when you say sensory overload, last year on the show, when some of my young guys asked me about it, they've never been to the Speedway or the race before. That was exactly how I described it. I just think when you're there, it's exhausting, but in a good way.
Yeah, it makes for a long day. But, when you go to the track and you see a car scream by at speed, maybe the first thing you realize is it's like, wow, that's loud, and the noise, right? And then the sights and the speed. And for me, watching a car come in, these cars are all beautiful, beautifully painted. They look great, right? As the car's coming at you, it goes fast. But I, in particular, like watching cars go past me and go away into the distance. And they just seem to jump. They almost move faster than your eyes and your brain can register. They're like here, then they're there, then they're there, and way down there. And that kind of jumping effect, you can feel it, in your bones, just the vibration from the sound. You can smell the exhaust of the racing fuel. And put all those together, Bobby, I really swear you can kind of taste it, right? I think it's all 5 senses. And it, when it's race day, it's 3 hours, and it's it's a long day of being out there. But you're in there with all these crazy folks, getting your sunburn, looking for shade, and watching these brave men and women tried to win the race. And I think, for the casual observer, you look at it and they say, it's just a bunch of left turns. Yeah, true. There are 4 left turns. There's 800 turns in the 200 lap, 500-mile race. But those turns are different, and they change over the course of the day based on the changing track conditions and the way the car, the how heavy or light it is with the fuel, whether their tires are new or whether they're worn. There's all these changes. So you just don't pop in a car and drive it fast. It is a kind of a chess match at 230 miles an hour where you're trying to stay ahead of the track and the changing conditions as the sun moves, as the wind picks up, or what have you. All this comes into play, making changes to the way the car handles, and hopefully you cross the line of bricks first at the end of the day.
Oh, of course. I mean, that's what all the drivers are rooting for. I mean, as we mentioned, it's one thing to be an IndyCar Series champion. It's another thing to be an Indy 500 champion.
Yeah, that the Borg-Warner Trophy, I consider it, that and the Stanley Cup, to be the 2 most iconic trophies in sports. It has the face in 3D of all the winners in the past, and having your face, put on that trophy, in a way, it kind of makes you immortal, right? You live forever on the Borg-Warner Trophy.
You've had a very interesting career too, Ray. I mean, talk about writing different sports books, whether it's about the Steelers or now about auto racing, but just even a career that's taken you to being an author, a musician, and obviously even a cancer survivor, which maybe some folks might not be aware of. But what made you decide now to write this book that you've always had passion about, and maybe speak a little bit about some of the other things that have gone on in your career that led you to this point?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Bobby. And I think you really hit the nail on the head, with being a cancer patient. I was diagnosed with a blood cancer in 2019. It's called multiple myeloma. It's an incurable but treatable cancer. And so I've been fighting that for, over 6 years now. It's also the subject of my second book, Me, Myself, and My Multiple Myeloma. I when I was first diagnosed, I attacked it the way I attacked it, kind of like everything. I was going to be in the best physical shape ahead of a stem cell transplant. I was going to, control my diet, all these other things. And it kind of like exhausted me, and I began to think, well, I need to kind of change my processes. So I kind of went on an introspective journey about my fight against cancer. And, one thing is that I recognize that, my whole being is more than just my physical being, that I consider my whole being to be components of my physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being, right? And then I started going back and looking at things like an old time management exercise. I used to facilitate for groups of people in my professional career. And it was a timeline exercise. And it's simply drawing a line left to right, horizontally across a piece of paper. Far left-hand side, make a little tick mark. And the far right-hand side, make a tick mark. On the left-hand side, you write down the letter B. That represents your birth. Bobby, you're way ahead of me. You already know what the right-hand side is. You put a little D there. That's going to be your death. So that segment is your timeline. So then the introspective part is where do you believe you are in that timeline? And Bobby, for years, I would just kind of like haphazardly throw my tick mark right in the middle because I was going to live forever, right? My diagnosis of multiple myeloma, kind of snapped me to reality. It's like, I'm probably further to the right than I thought before my diagnosis. So what does that mean? And, to me, what it meant is, as I looked at it, it's like, well, there's a lot of things I want to do. But like a lot of humans, I think I take time for granted. And I've probably taken time too much for granted. So I would put off things. I would take all tomorrows for granted, Bobby, next week's, next month's, next year. And depending on the topic, it may be decades I just take for granted. It was that old someday I will ... You mentioned music, when we're performing, the one way to make some extra money for a starving musician is to have some cool t-shirts for people to buy. Put a little logo on the front, put a little saying on the back, right? And so that saying, I'm always looking for a motto, and that saying was, if not now, when? And based on the fact that here I was conscious of taking time for granted far too often. And because I took time for granted, I took relationships for granted too. If my good friend Bobby, if I'm thinking about him, well, maybe I'll just text him tomorrow, or I'll give him a call next week or whatever. I mean, Bobby's going to be here next week. I'm going to be here next week. What's it matter if I get to it today? So, if not now, when? What's the thing I want to do? What are the things that mean the most to me? And who are the people I want to do it with? And excuse me, that led to the first book. You alluded to it in Immaculate, How the Steelers Saved Pittsburgh, a book I'm very proud of. That just started off with the idea of, if not now, when.
Interestingly enough, too, as someone that is a big time fan of Steve McQueen, you've got the terrific quote, "Racing is life. Anything before or after is just waiting." That was actually what made me think of that question, too, to lead off the interview about, how excited I am about the 500 and how this is the greatest month of the year for me, greatest time, race week. But then you have to wait a little bit after qualifying. So a lot of build up leading up to the big race. And Steve McQueen, another example of a really cool individual, king of cool, but even him, dying at a pretty young age. I believe I was going to look it up. I believe 50 years old, he passed away.
Yeah, way too young. It's funny. I was talking with a podcaster, a week or two ago, and we were talking about the Brad Pitt F1 movie coming out, and he's like, "How come there's never any really good, auto racing movies?" I said, "But there are some. It's not Le Mans is not a great movie, but it's a great auto racing movie." That's where that quote from Steve McQueen comes from. And if you all have not seen it out there in the audience, the first 45 minutes, there's not a single bit of scripted dialogue. It's just
a documentary about racing.
Yeah, it's just great. And one of the first scripted bits of dialogue is that quote that comes out, "Racing is life, anything before and after is just waiting." And then another great movie, I like James Garner in the movie Grand Prix. That's probably early 60s Grand Prix Formula One racing, but that's always a good one as well to watch.
Based off the book A Cruel Sport.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, I didn't know that. I'll look the book up.
Which is a great read. Robert Daly, actually a Fordham University graduate.
Hey, so there you go. I always think the books are better than the movies, so I will pull that up.
No, great. And so now, someone that lives in Southern California, are you going to make the race on Sunday? Are you going to come to Indy?
Maybe, and that is because I have treatment on Wednesday. So we'll see how I feel, but it's my hope. I'm anticipating it. I put where my tickets are in the book. If you read the introduction, so if you're around the Speedway on Sunday, pop up to the Paddock Penthouse, section 23, row double C, seats 13 and 14. That's me.
I'll be heading there midweek, and obviously would love to see you if you're there. And I know that you also went on YouTube and put together reading some of this first chapter. But again, for the folks at home, I definitely recommend you picking up the book. Where can they get it?
You can get it wherever fine books are sold. I've been taught to say that, Bobby. So it's available at all bookstores. It came out May 6th. You can also catch me at my site, rayhartjen.com. If you do order it from my site, just let me know how you want me to inscribe it, and I'll sign a copy, pop it in the mail to you.
Awesome, Ray. And thank you so much for the signed copy myself. And I guess before we let you go, I don't know if you're at liberty, but do you have a winner that you have on Sunday? Who would you pick to win the big race?
Well, prior to today, I was kind of thinking somebody like Will Power, Penske driver, car number 12. He's going to be starting last in the field. That looks pretty tough. If I had to pick a favorite, I watched today's practice. A lot of teams look good. Instead of picking a favorite, how about I go something a little bit different and say, excuse my dog in the background. If you are new to IndyCar racing, a team that you might want to look up is the Dreyer Reinbold team. It is an Indianapolis-based team, and they run one IndyCar event a year, just one, and that's the Indy 500. And they always qualify. They always take it to the big boys. Their drivers this year are a former 500 champion called Ryan Hunter-Reay, and his teammate is Jack Harvey, who typically is a pit lane reporter for Fox, who's carrying it. So, it'd be cool to see Dreyer Reinbold. They're always competitive, but here they are, just a scrappy, Indianapolis-based team that races one event a year. That'd be pretty cool. And then we have that great story from yesterday, Robert Schwartzman, a rookie from Israel, who won the pole position for a team that just moved into their racing headquarters, their facility, a couple of months ago. So, kind of unheard of. 500 miles is a long way to go for a rookie who's never raced an oval race before, and for a team who's never raced an oval race before. So, you know, I wouldn't call them favorites, but it'll be a wonderful story to see him do well. And rooting for the dry Rheinbold guys. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, usually the pole sitter has the best chance to win, but the last decade we really haven't seen that happen. So it'll be interesting to have a rookie in that spot, see if he can maybe make history.
Let me turn the tables on you, Bobby. Who do you have as a favorite? Who do you have as a favorite for the race?
Well, I mean, Will Power definitely would have been, you know, when Newgarden and Power were coming in 12th and 13th, it seemed more like a good option there. But no one's ever won the race from the last spot in the field, so I don't think I would choose Will Power or maybe even Newgarden in this race. Even though if there was anybody that could probably change that fate, it probably would be someone like Josef Newgarden. I mean, to me, of course, right now, toast of the town is Alex Palou. I don't know if you can win 5 of 6 races to start the season, including the Indy 500. But if I had to give you one guy right now, I might take Pato O'Ward.
Yeah, you said I don't know if you can, but if anybody can, it seems like he and his Chip Ganassi team will.
Yeah, of course.
You know, one thing, the bad news about the penalties for the Penske stuff, we talked about that, but you know, the last 2 rows are going to feature Colton Herta in a fantastic race car, Marcus Armstrong in a fantastic race car, Josef Newgarden and Will Power in fantastic race cars. So we have 4 guys in the last 2 rows who are destined to move forward pretty quickly. So it will be interesting on Sunday to see how much progress they make.
Most definitely. And don't count out to Kumasato too. I mean, that's a 2-time.
Oh yeah, what a story he is.
In the front row.
Yeah, what a story he is. 2-time winner and sitting in the middle of the front row, looking good, always looking good at Indy.
Well, Ray, thank you so much for taking the time. We actually lost Aaron, which is disappointing, but I'm sure he would say the same thing. And I absolutely love the book. I'm sure all our race fans at home will love it too. The Indy 500, a year-long quest to win the greatest spectacle in racing. Ray Hartjen, pick it up now in time for the Indy 500.
Yeah, Bobby, thank you again. Like I said, I was super excited to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I greatly appreciate it. And enjoy the race on Sunday.
I'll see you Sunday.
All righty.